yes, I know what you want. You want to look good, don't you? You want to look good in front of your friends, your co-workers, maybe your potential future significant other. Well, you're in the right spot because this is the all-new 2021 redesigned Acura TLX. But this is actually the A-Spec with the super handling all-wheel drive. So very important vehicle for Acura. All the changes really started out with the RDX. Unfortunately, I did not get a chance to try out that vehicle. Hopefully I'll try to get an opportunity here soon. But this TLX, this is exciting for many car enthusiasts because I've actually driven every iteration of all these Acuras, and this is very different, and I like where they're headed with this, okay? I've driven the first generation TSX. I owned the second generation TSX. My family had the TLX, and I drove the A-Spec version of that generation as well. I've driven the RLXs, I've driven the TL, so I have a pretty good grasp of all these Acuras now after I've driven them all, and this is a really nice step in the right direction, basically. This is the most like sports sedan, like this is the most polished up, most mature, buttoned down TLX in like this sedan family, if you will. So enough of that, let's go ahead and let's get this thing out on the road and we'll talk more about it there. Because let's first of all, let's start out with the looks here, because the looks of this vehicle, I really like it a lot. It actually looks like a rear-wheel drive vehicle almost. It's got those types of proportions to it. Overall, this vehicle is lower, longer, wider, all that good stuff, you know, typical things that they like to do with these kind of sports sedan type vehicles. They even, of course, they extended out the wheelbase, but like rear legroom didn't exactly grow. It's actually all for rigidity, basically, as we're about to find out in the drive. But this is one of my most favorite looking Acura models, and not just because this is the A-Spec model, but even the regular TLX looks great, honestly. It's just a great, sleek, kind of classy looking sedan. It always has been, but this generation, they continued that, but they really improved it as well. But you let me know in the comment section below. I feel like most of you guys have already told me that you really like the way this vehicle looks, but that's all subjective. What's not is all the changes that they made. So let's talk about this drive now. Let's talk about this power plant. Okay, so only one engine option. Okay, this 2-liter 4-cylinder, basically this detuned Civic Type R engine, produces about 272 horsepower and about 280 pounds-feet of torque. Made it to a 10-speed automatic transmission. I was very curious about this automatic. Luckily, I've been driving this car around for the last couple of days now, and so far this drivetrain, pretty good. I've been pretty impressed with it. Other things, okay, the curb weight actually surprisingly went up about 200 pounds. Acura never really discloses that, but honestly, it's not really something that they should be ashamed of because this chassis is so freaking rigid. So when you have a more higher curb weight vehicle, I've always said this in the past, if you have a higher curb weight vehicle like this, which sits at about 4,000 pounds, and you marry it to a great chassis, you have a fantastic feeling, high quality vehicle out on the street, and that's exactly what this is. And yes, this all-wheel drive is definitely something that you should take advantage of because it allows you to drive like a maniac. You don't have to worry about grip. Will auto upshift though. Brakes are really good as well. The brakes are interesting because this is actually an electronically controlled brake now. It's not a hydraulic one anymore. So because it's electronically controlled now instead of being hydraulically controlled, the brake pedal, I thought that would actually kind of ruin things, like it'll kind of ruin the feel, but honestly they did a pretty good job keeping the brake feel pretty natural feeling. Okay, it gives you some bite up front, but then the brake pedal itself, you actually have to get in on it a little bit. So it's a very natural braking feel, but I will say when you get really hard on the brakes, you kind of miss out on the feel a little bit. But overall, though, they've done a great job. I thought they would ruin it with some of this electronic stuff, but they didn't. And this, speaking of electronics, okay, this is an electric steering rack, okay? This honestly feels, I don't want to say completely hydraulic feeling, but it's got a great kind of weight to it, basically. Feels really sturdy, and that's one of the biggest changes that they made between the previous TLX, which I actually really enjoyed driving, but this one just feels so much more solid. And even when I first got into this vehicle, right, I noticed how heavy the doors felt and kind of how thick they were too, so it gives a nice solid kind of planted feel on the road. That's what I'm saying. I actually kind of like a higher curb weight vehicle such as this because it gives you that nice sense of confidence and solidity out on the road here. Like I mentioned, this super handling all-wheel drive, this is a 4th generation This is actually a 4th generation super handling all-wheel drive setup. So what happens is this all-wheel drive system will actually send up to 70% of the power to the rear, but that's actually not what's interesting here. This all-wheel drive system now actually sends the power 30% faster to the rear wheels and back than the 3rd generation all-wheel drive system. And you really feel that. That's what I'm saying. You can drive this vehicle like a maniac and really get away with it because you feel just how quickly power is being sent to the different wheels. You even have a little display up here to show you that as well. It's very impressive. So yes, the all-wheel drive, that's a must for me. It's about a $2,000 option, and yes, you can just drive it like an idiot. It gives a really crazy kind of neutral feel. I know this is a front-wheel drive-based vehicle, but with the all-wheel drive, it doesn't matter like what wheels are being controlled because it just feels so neutral. Such an interesting experience that is bespoke to this Acura. Now another thing, okay, this generation marks the return of the double wishbone suspension. Now the generation of TSX I owned did utilize a double wishbone suspension, but for the TLX, they actually went away from that. Okay, they used a strut-based suspension. Now it's back, so it really isolates out the bumps a little bit better. But I will say this is a little bit on the firm side, but in a good way. This actually, I know this is going to sound crazy, but it actually reminds me of the 2021 Mercedes CLS 53 AMG I drove. Now hear me out. That vehicle also has like this kind of nice heavy pin down feel out on the road, and a little bit on the firm side as well, the ride, but it kind of shows you that's a sports sedan basically. Now this is obviously a little bit softer than that AMG still, which is good, but I'm just saying it kind of replicates that type of feel, and it has a little bit more of that Euro vibe to it. They've struck a very unique balance here between being a heavy feeling vehicle but still being kind of light on its toes like Acuras usually always were. So that's cool. Grip for days. Now I will say the only limiting factor here is actually the tires, which is a Michelin Primacy tire, kind of all season touring tire basically. If you put some more aggressive all seasons on here, it would be perfect, dude. The grip would be crazy. But here's another thing, okay? Let's talk about this powertrain, because one of the things I really missed from that previous TLX was obviously that V6 engine. No, we don't have that here. You have to step up to a Type S, but that's actually a turbocharged V6, and we don't know much about that yet. It hasn't been released yet. This thing has actually made it to that 10-speed. I was really worried about that 10-speed, but actually there's really nothing to worry about. I really enjoyed this 10-speed automatic, even though it will auto upshift, okay? Even when you put in the manual mode, you can press the drive button twice. It'll put you in a manual mode, kind of lock you in there, but this 10-speed, you know, just a regular automatic mode reacts extremely well. 10 speeds is too many gears, but the way that this thing reacts is extremely good. It's natural. It's not as crispy as that 8-speed dual clutch, but it's still very good, and it never once detracted from the driving feel basically for me. And this engine obviously still pulls extremely well, because it does actually make technically like almost 100 pounds-feet of torque more than the 4-cylinder, like the base 4-cylinder before. But the way they've tuned this engine is interesting, because yes, this has VTEC, but it's not like the crazy, ridiculous VTEC that we all know and love, the one that sends you back in time after you reach 5,000 RPMs, you know, new portals and dimensions open up. Nothing like that happens here, because at the top end, nothing really happens actually. It's like a typical 4-cylinder turbo where the power kind of does bottom out a little bit. Not really bottom out, but you get what I'm saying. And it doesn't really pull that well in the low end either, actually. That's typically where turbo 4-cylinders shine, but the way they managed to tune this is they actually focus on the mid-range basically. So in the middle RPM band is actually where you get a lot of the power and the boost from. So surprisingly, I've noticed when you put in the sport mode, for once, I don't really like putting cars in the sport mode, but in this, it really keeps you in that mid-range power band. It always gives you that instantaneous thrust. Like I'm in the sport mode right now, gives you effortless thrust. So I think for a street daily driver, this is tuned extremely well, and that's where they've really managed to succeed for me, basically, being a great daily driver, being pragmatic with this all-wheel drive setup, basically. They've done a really great job. You see, look at this, you just turn in, like, doesn't matter, it's so good all the time. This chassis is really good. Like, you can tell, like, the way this chassis is set up, like, this vehicle has a lot more to offer. Like, they got something hidden up their sleeve, basically. Like, it really is set up for that Type S, basically. Like, you know, like, the way this is set up, this car can handle so much more. Like, the rigidity of the chassis, there's not a ridiculous amount of body roll or anything like that. The grip from this vehicle, it is just great. And with a proper suspension setup, all these things, this vehicle has a lot of potential, man. this thing can definitely use a turbocharged 6-cylinder. I'm just curious how they're going to tune the way that thing is going to sound. Now, one of the few things that I've noticed is this vehicle does not utilize double pane glass, but this vehicle is extremely quiet even without it, so that's good. And one of the things that they could probably improve upon is actually the transmission. It's not as crispy as that 8-speed dual clutch. I didn't expect it to be, but at least it's smooth and it reacts exactly how I would expect it to. It just could be a slight bit quicker, but for the most part, again, like I mentioned, it never once detracted from the driving experience, so that's what I like here. And I do think power is plentiful here. I've noticed that when you put in the sport mode, obviously you probably heard it through the camera, the vehicle gets a lot louder. I feel like that is just audio being pumped through the speaker, so that's something I did notice, but it's not really, it doesn't sound stupid in any way. It actually sounds pretty good in my personal opinion. Not as good as that V6, but very nice, man. This thing is going to be more than enough for you, man. This is a lot of fun to drive. This is, I've really enjoyed my time with it too. And high-speed stability, that's always been excellent with these Honda Acura products. Like that driving characteristic, they've definitely kept that, but they've kind of brought that European kind of solidity and heaviness to it as well, which I really like. They did an interesting blend here of all these things. So that's fantastic. Now, with all that established, let's go ahead and let's check out this interior now. All right, so now that we are stopped, let's go ahead and let's take a little look at this interior, shall we? Because again, this is another huge change, because many of you guys have been begging Acura to change their interior setup, and they finally have. It really started with the RDX in 2019, but it's now been trickled down into this TLX for this new generation. Now, I guess first of all, let's talk about the seating position here. Seating position is excellent. You have a lot of adjustability in these front seats here, electric, of course, for both the front driver's seat and passenger seat as well, so that's nice. But you got these nice two little haunches here that really helps you in pointing this vehicle. It's in the bonnet. It's kind of a nice and chiseled. This whole body is nice and chiseled, but I like those haunches in the hood there. It really helps you to kind of point this vehicle. The mirrors are a great size, really helps you out there, and the seeing out of the rear is pretty good as well. These A-pillars can be a little obtrusive, but for the most part, you can see it around. It's not too bad. And obviously for this new generation, you got a few little safety features as standard. So if you don't know how to drive, well, there you go. You get a little few things there. But most importantly, though, I mean, I've said this about older Acuras as well, but their solidity is great, and that obviously continues here. And like I mentioned kind of during the drive, I mentioned, you know, how rigid the chassis was and all that. But I also, one of the first things I mentioned when I got in here was just how heavy the doors were, basically. Like, these doors feel nice and heavy, and so when you close them, it feels great. So I really enjoy that. This doesn't quite feel like as light and airy like the previous kind of Acura products do. This is kind of back to that old kind of, you know, nice, heavy feeling vehicle, very much kind of Euro inspired, I feel like, so that's great. It also translates into the interior space as well, and all the panels are great. There's no creaks and rattles going on with this particular model anyway. So my press car here has about 4,300 miles on it, and it has held up extremely well, so I love that. So this is also the A-Spec model. That's another important thing to talk about here. So when I spec'd one out, it was about $46,000. Like, me personally, I would actually stem for the A-Spec model, and I'll explain myself. So with the A-Spec, you actually get 19-inch wheels, of course, wrapped in 255 wide tires in all four corners, and that's nice and all, but otherwise you don't really get a whole other bunch of changes like with the driving dynamics, not that I know of anyway. So nothing's been mentioned about driving dynamics. It's mainly just the appearance package on the exterior and obviously some interior bits as well. So let me explain. The A-Spec is about like $2,700, something like that, and you get some interior upgrades like these seats, right? So these seats are incredible. One of my most favorite things about the interior, just sitting in, they look incredible. It's this red interior, of course, gotta have that. You know, you gotta, you know, white, black wheels, and then the red interior. That's how you do it, baby. And so I do like the aesthetics of it. It's got this nice little suede in the middle here. It kind of really does truly keep you in place as well. You don't slide about in here. These are some excellent seats. So I do love that. But seats aside, you also get the upgraded 17-speaker ELS 3D audio system, okay? Now, this is huge. This audio system, Like the audio system and the all-wheel drive, the two things you got to spend money on with this particular vehicle to really make it worthwhile, because that really transforms your experience, okay? So here's the thing. To get the A-Spec trim level, you actually have to spec the $4,000 like technology package or whatever. And if you just got the technology package, you will get the ELS audio, but it's not the same one that you get here. Unfortunately, I didn't listen to that audio system, so I don't really know if it's worth it or not. But this one I know for a fact is this 3D. So you have two options if you want to spec the 3D option, ELS 3D option. You either have to get an A-Spec or you get the advanced package, and then you'll get even more features and you'll get the ELS 3D option. I would skip that route. I'd rather pay like $2,700, like half of that, and get this A-Spec. Not only does it look amazing on the exterior, but the interior changes. You get these amazing seats, and you get the 3D ELS option with that A-Spec package. So that's great. And that's why you're looking at about $46,000. So it'll be a good vehicle to definitely try and leasing out. And other interior things here. So the steering wheel changes. You got a nice little perforated steering wheel here with the flat bottom. It's a great steering wheel. Love that. So that also changes for the A-Spec models. The kind of technology, the advanced package vehicles don't get this, so that's another great thing, with these kind of nice metallic paddle shifters, which are really nice as well, instead of those plastic paddle shifters that the old TLX had. So this is nice. One-touch auto windows for all four windows. That's great. Two-way memory seating function. You have parking sensors, but if you wanted a 360 camera, you have to get the advanced package. You don't get that here, but again, just learn how to drive. You don't need 3,000 cameras to learn how to, back a freaking car up. So there's that, but you do get a regular backup camera, and it does perform great. It's got lines that actually move with the steering wheel, so there's that. And I love the gauge cluster. Okay, the gauge cluster has been changed. I think this is bespoke to the A-Spec, but they look really nice and aggressive, kind of like the silver with the red kind of lettering on it. Looks really great. Got a nice little crispy screen in the middle there as well. Shows you some good information, so there is that. Vehicle gets about 21 city, 29 on the highway, MPG wise. You do have to put premium fuel in this thing, which is something you have to keep in mind. And other things to know. Okay, automatic headlights. Let's talk about the most important thing here now. 10.2-inch infotainment screen. Okay, many of you, everyone including myself, hated the 2-screen thing that they were doing before. Thank goodness they got rid of that, but now they replace it with another thing here. Okay, it's got this kind of trackpad mouse thing. Okay, me personally, this has been a little bit cumbersome to use. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of this. Surprisingly, I'm shocked that they went this route, because this is what Lexus uses. This is different from the Lexus unit. I'm one of the few people on this planet that actually like the Lexus infotainment systems, but this is even more confusing than that. This is it makes nice little sounds. I like the little rich noises that this vehicle makes. I like that little shuffling sound. And also when you turn the vehicle off, it makes a nice little tone as well. So they have these nice little expensive tones in here. It's really great. It really brings it to a nice upscale feel in this vehicle. But this infotainment, it looks clean. It's really crisp. I love the graphics of it, but man, to use it, it's a little bit difficult. So this is going to take some getting used to. I mean, everybody's brain is different. You may love this system, but me personally, it's been a little bit cumbersome. I hate how you kind of mouse around and kind of disappears after a while. It's kind of weird. I don't know. It's just strange. But you do have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. No, this is not a touchscreen. And you got a little navigation here as well. So there's that. But me personally, I just connect to the audio system, Bluetooth, or a USB, and then I just listen to the music, man. That's really all I care about. I could really care less about infotainment, because cars shouldn't even have infotainment in them to begin with. But car makers can't sell cars without putting that in there. So, there you go. But just to let you know, it's a little bit cumbersome, but the audio system in here more than makes up for it, so I don't care. The other thing I really love is the climate control totally separated from the screen. So you have your own little display, fantastic, stupid easy to use. You got heated and cooled seats, and you got a very nice gear lever situation here. I really enjoy that. It's really easy. If you're going to do gear levers that are electronically operated, this is a good way to do it. And you got this nice dynamic mode selection thing here. Feels nice and of quality. And of course, you got the interior lighting in here, so that changes. So you can customize the lights. You only have 6 or 7 light options, but I like how when you put into the sport mode, you get the kind of red lights, and then when you put into the comfort mode, you get blue lights. And then when you put in normal mode, you got these white lights. They could ditch this piano black plastic and kind of give you a more matte finish texture here. That would be nice. But everything else in here is real aluminum. Okay, like these kind of side things here. This is real aluminum. Feels cool to the touch. Or if you got the advanced package, you would have real wood here. And this is real kind of merino leather as well. So that's great. All real materials here. So it's very upscale. Me personally, I really like this interior. This is a huge step up from like the Honda interiors for sure. This is like night and day difference between that, as well as the solidity. Place to store your phone, but it's not just a place to store your phone. It's actually a wireless charger. You got 2 big cup holders, good space in the door pockets. You got good space inside of the center armrest here with 2 USB ports and an aux cable. Glove box, decent size as well. Okay, let's move on. Talk about the rear seats now, because the rear seats, it's interesting because I think there's less room back there than it is in the previous generation TLX. Actually, I think a Honda Civic, like a new one, has more space in this vehicle. So why is that? What have they done here? Yes, they have lengthened the car out, but honestly, a lot of that has went to the rigidity of the chassis instead. That's why it drives so well. What's the deal back there? Can I fit? Yes, I'm 5'11". I can sit in the front, I can sit in the back behind myself, but here's the thing, I sit closer to the wheel than most people my size. But me personally, I kind of like that because, if you can't fit back there, then get out of my sports sedan. You feel me? I like the attitude on this little car, so that's good. You got the spicy red seats back there, same comfort. Obviously, nobody can sit in the middle. It's too high up. It's not enough space back there, but you do have vents back there, so that's good. No heated seats back there, but headroom is great back there. That's not an issue. And yeah, it's definitely a usable rear seat. I like that. I like how it's usable, but it's not like super comfortable. What are you, a chauffeur in this thing? No. This is a sports sedan, so that's good. Now the trunk, they've actually also reduced the size of the trunk a little bit, but Acura trunks have always been great. The way they lay them out is fantastic because it's got a nice big opening in it, so you can fit large things in there. Like the trunk space is still fantastic. There's no spare tire back there, unfortunately, but the amount of space back there is fantastic, and you can fold down the rear seats too. So that has always made Acuras extremely practical and a pragmatic choice amongst other vehicles. So wrapping everything up, okay, what do I think about this particular vehicle? This is definitely a vehicle I'd personally shortlist. This is miles and leagues above like the other products, like their older Acuras, because this has now been finally polished up, fine-tuned. I like everything about it. I like driving it. The drivetrain is good. This is the most exciting 4-cylinder turbo. If you want a smooth 4-cylinder turbo experience, Audi does a very smooth 4-cylinder. So Audi and Acura, 2 of my most favorite 4-cylinders for 2 very different reasons. And I like the comfort sitting inside this vehicle. This interior is a huge step up. The infotainment is a little clunky, I admit, but everything else, it's good. I feel at home driving some of these Japanese cars because ergonomically they're just fantastic. They're set up great. Everything just works in here. I love it. So something to check out, something to lease. It's going to be a pragmatic choice. Even if you got the front wheel drive, which I don't recommend, get the super handling all wheel drive because it really does drive that well. But even if you got just the front wheel drive, you want to save $2,000, just put some snow tires on. It's very versatile over those kind of rear wheel drive only vehicles. So that's another thing. So let me know if you're an owner of this particular car, like this generation. Let me know how you're liking it. If you've tried out some other vehicles, leave all your thoughts down in the comment section below. I will be making another POV video. It'll just be for fun. I'll talk about a few other things with this car. But yeah, this is a home run for me with Acura. This is a great little product. I've always liked Acuras and the way they drive, but this has finally been polished up. So again, curious to hear your thoughts. Leave them down below. I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care and goodbye.